Cool. Hello again, everybody. It's Dr. Frank Gomez, and we're on the Wellness Connection, Tuesday at noon here at churchtalkradio.com and Facebook Live on my Facebook page, Total Health Wellness Center. And that is also the name of my practice, is Total Health Wellness Center. It's in Sayville on Sunrise Highway. And the number there, if you ever wish to call, is 631-991-3492. But for today on churchtalkradio.com, if you want to call in, if you have any questions about weight loss, health, anything that we've gone over, that number is 631-766-9931. Okay, so today we're going to be doing a... got a little technical thing going on here. This is the fifth part of our six-part little get-together here called Weight Loss and Fitness. Today we're going to be talking about the effects of a dehydration. And it's actually far more reaching than you might think. But before we get going, let's just kind of review really quick about what we did. First we talked about the macronutrients that we take in: proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. We talked about how carbohydrates are more like gasoline, and where you can store it or burn it, and that's it. Whereas fats and proteins can be interchangeable. The body can actually morph them into other things that they need them for. And we also talked about the problem with excessive weight gain is more than not is the excessive carbohydrates that people eat, especially in the Western diet that we have here. If you look at all the foods and the things that we, especially if you go out to eat and whatever, most of those are carbohydrates. And processed carbohydrates, not just some of the good carbohydrates and the good starches that we have. Then we talked about flexibility, before and after warm-ups, before you work out, how flexibility can actually prevent injuries, because even if we don't do any training at all, as we get older, our muscles tend to shorten. And when muscles shorten, the joints don't work properly, and that can actually lead to injuries in joints and not just the muscles. We talked about aerobics and the difference between aerobics and cardio. And when you go into the gym now, aerobic is something that puts an actual strain on the heart to make it better, right? So you're going to pressure the heart, doing some kind of, if you're on the treadmill, if you're on elliptical or whatever you're on, and usually you're moving a lot faster than you would if you're doing cardio, because cardio is basically just for fat burning. So you're going to be moving in a longer time distance, or walking a longer distance if you're outside, to get the body to start to break down the fats into ketones and then use those. And that's not to say aerobics wouldn't do that, but more of cardio would do that more. And then we talked about strength training, lifted weights, resistive training, how important that is to the muscles, and how important it is to longevity by keeping our muscles strong, and how the muscles function, and some of the things that you can do in the gym and outside the gym. So those are the kind of the things that we kind of hit on, which brings us up to date here on our part 5. And as always, I have a newsletter that I put together, and I have some research on there. So every once in a while, I'll be reading off of that. So the body roughly has about 11 gallons of water inside of it. Like the planet is 75% water. The body is pretty close. Depending on what you're reading, it's probably like an average of like 70% water in the total body counts. Our blood is 85% water, our muscles are 80% water, and our brain is 75% water, and our bones are 25% water. So having water in our systems is a tremendous value and plays a very important role, physiologically speaking, in our bodies. So if we have dehydration, how do you know you're dehydrated? Sometimes you don't know. You can't really always go by thirst, but by the time you're thirsty, you're definitely dehydrated, and that needs to be replaced. But even short-term dehydration can cause headaches, right? Can cause constipation, can cause kidney stones, lack in the water of the body can also affect your brain. We're going to talk about some of this, and affect your mood and overall cognitive and emotional, behavior. And I actually had the pleasure of being dehydrated this weekend. I had a stomach bug on Saturday and hit hard Saturday night, so I couldn't keep anything down. Right? You eat, everybody goes through this, you eat something and it just comes back up, and your stomach feels like you got rocks in there and they're just beating you up inside. And you don't want to eat, you can't drink anything until whatever the bug is or whatever it was that you have that actually goes away. So by Sunday, I was a wreck. We talked about a little bit. I got fatigued, which is the thing with dehydration. And I was kind of irritable. I was like, because you're not really sick, but your stomach is sick, and you want to eat because you're hungry, but you can't eat because it just doesn't stay down. Even if you eat a little bit, sometimes this was for me, that nausea just came back and just made it, made it was a terrible feeling, So, and it affects the way we think. It affects you're fatigued. You don't feel like getting up. Your muscles are weak. Everything is weak, and especially as that nausea builds up and the dehydration builds up, you get weaker and weaker. So one of the things that actually happens when we're dehydrated is our brain shrinks. Well, our brain is 75% water, right? So if we don't have enough water in our system, our brain actually, the brain volume actually shrinks. And there's been research to actually prove that. So when your brain goes through certain changes, that actually is going to affect your mood, obviously, right? You're not going to really think well. There was a research that was done by the British Medical, I'm going to read this right off here, British Medical Journal. What they did is they took 220 healthy women in their mid-20s and they fluid deprived them for only 24 hours. Half the Americans are dehydrated, and it's a lot longer than 24 hours. And that's where we really pay the price, and then our body starts to break down. But this was a 24-hour research thing. Thirst went up, and then the heart rate goes up. Your heart rate goes up because now your blood becomes a little thicker if you're dehydrated, and has to pump harder and push harder to get the blood going through faster, to get the oxygen that your body needs. So, what's went up, and urine output was actually reduced, which is normal. So the authors of the study noted this about mood and effects in their subjects. The significant effects of fluid deprival on mood included decreased alertness and increased sleepiness, fatigue, and confusion. Most people don't think of that. If you're dehydrated, you just figure you're thirsty, and, they don't really put two and two together saying, well, maybe I slept well, but I don't know why I'm still tired. You're still tired because you did sleep well. You just don't have enough water in your body, and that's creating the fatigue in your body. And also, the most consistent effects of even mild dehydration on mood or sleep and awake parameters. So even though you're sleeping, you're not resting, a lot of things just from not having enough water in your system. And it's the easiest thing to fix, right? So the good news is that if you drink something, within 20 minutes, if you drink water within 20 minutes, you could start to replenish the water in your system, and you can actually start to feel better. Right? Your mood will start to change a little bit, hopefully. Some people are just not in a good mood that day, and that happens. But you definitely, you start to get some of your strength back, and start to thinking a little bit better. Also, the reduction of headaches. The reason why you're getting these headaches is from the blood volume being decreased in your brain, and the brain's shrinking, and that's cause dehydration headaches. That's what they're actually called. I have a lot of people that come in the office for headache treatments, chiropractically, because as a chiropractor, if there is a lack of stimulation from the upper neck to your brain and your skull, it's going to cause headache. And one or two adjustments, usually one adjustment, the headache is gone, because now you're releasing the stimulation of the nervous system and allowing that to function better. And a lot of times when it's not, it's because you're dehydrated. One of the first things I talk to patients about when they come in, especially when they have headaches, I ask, well, how is your fluid intake? And a lot of people, they say, I don't like water. Okay, I don't know how you can not like water. It doesn't taste like anything. And then they'll drink. Well, I drink coffee instead. Well, I guess it's better than nothing, but coffee actually has a small diuretic influence on your body, so you might be getting rid of more than you're actually putting in. Plus, the caffeine does the same thing. A lot of caffeine is really not that good for you, anyways. But so you really start to drink water. Most people, they're like, well, okay, let's drink fruit juice. Fruit juice, even organic fruit juice that you can buy now, if you look, it's a very concentrated, which means there's a lot of sugar content. And yes, it's good sugar content, but if it's still too much sugar content, that can cause dehydration as well. And sometimes some of these drinks have sodium, high sodium counts, and that will drive your body to be thirsty, because that will rid your body of water as well. The same thing, when they say like having a high sodium count, people that are lost at sea, they can't drink the seawater because that will actually shrivel their cells. And that's kind of the same theory with the salt and sodium that's in a lot of the foods that we eat and drink these days. So, to increase any changes, you just gotta drink. And then here's something that I actually didn't know until I read this, because it's not something I was taught, and anything that I've read until recently, is that if you have chilled water, even though most people, when they're thirsty, they want to have something cold, chilled water actually gets absorbed 20% faster than room temperature water. Now, we were taught the complete opposite, because your body has to actually make that water into temperature, like body temperature, for it to actually be used. But so this is just another research thing. So say, not only is it better when you're cold and you get more refreshed when you drink cold water, it gets absorbed a lot faster as well. So that's pretty cool. Or you can just throw it on your face too. That helps. All right. So there's also another study from Harvard University. Right. We talked about this. Half of the children are dehydrated in America, which can lead to serious consequences. Also, not only in their health, but in their performance in school. Right. And boys were 75% more likely to be dehydrated as compared to girls in school. I didn't know that either, and I thought maybe the boys are more active, but that's not it either. And as I read through the study, they said that boys are more, what they said exactly, the apparent link shows that boys tended to select more sugary beverages than the girls did. And again, the sugar actually will cause you to be more dehydrated. So that sped up the dehydration process there. And water actually dissolves more things, quote unquote, than any other liquid in the world. It's really it's a very inexpensive thing. and it doesn't really have to, people are like, well, now they have this thing pH balanced and more. Okay, yeah, that would be better, but actually Long Island has one of the best tap waters, even though it does have, it has other chemicals in it. They put some chlorine in it, and they put fluoride in it, and that's not good for us. But as a whole, based on through the United States, because Long Island is built from sediment, right? It's like having almost a built-in filter, and drinking water from the tap isn't the worst thing you can possibly do either. So, if you're out there and you need water, just grab it from the tap. All right. Now, with being dehydrated affects our cognitive ability, right? So we really can't think normally, as we would with having proper brain function. Anytime you don't have proper brain function, you're not going to be thinking, straight, as I say. Impaired, I'm just going to read this off here. Impaired driving is similar to being fatigued or intoxicated. So, when your cognitive functions take a hit and your ability to concentrate declines, there are serious problems that result when driving at the wheel. All right? Research from Loughborough University, I didn't look up to see where that was, so I really don't have any idea, but it's a university, shows that drivers that were dehydrated made twice the amount of errors in a 2-hour drive compared to hydrated drivers, which is very similar to drunk driving. So if you're really dehydrated for any length of time, your body is not going to respond fast enough, your reflexes aren't going to be there, and you're going to make bad decisions as you would if you were drinking. So, which is, a lot of good things, because now hopefully the summer's coming, and it's still warm, but it's not really summer weather yet. But you don't have to be in hot climates to be dehydrated. Even in coldest times with the winds, that could dehydrate you, because it takes the sweat is just evaporated off your face, and it's blown around, right off you, and then your body needs to hydrate again. So they went on to say that during normal hydration tests, there were 47 driving errors. That's normal, right? They did a 2-hour test. You made 47 driving errors. They don't go to tell you exactly what the driving errors. They could have been minimal, like going over a line or something. I'm just assuming that it was some kind of a little obstacle course that, like you do at a driving test or whatever. The number rose to 101 when the men were dehydrated. So again, twice as many mistakes. And it shows us too that if they were sleep deprived. Now, you know how you feel when you're sleep deprived, right? You feel like you're a zombie. When you're dehydrated, your brain functions the same way. You may not get that zombie feeling, but obviously your brain is a zombie when you're dehydrated. So the dehydration leads to reduced brain activity as well as drops in alertness and short-term memory. So you might find when you're out talking, you don't remember things. A lot of times I just say, because I'm getting older, I don't remember things. Like you go into a room, and then you're like, why am I here? Then you go all the way back, and you're like, oh yeah, that's what I got. You go all the way back to that room. It happens a lot. But some of that can actually be from dehydration. So it's important. Water is important. So, the whole body suffers when we're dehydrated, because then your blood gets thicker, your kidneys got to work harder. There's not enough oxygen in the system for the muscles, so then your energy levels decrease. And, there's a whole bunch of things that happen because you don't have enough water in your system. So there are a lot of markers that we use in the office, and in testing people for dehydration, or just in general. Because what we do in our office, we take extensive blood work in the beginning, and then we fill out a questionnaire, and then we put all that together. But from the results that we get back, we can see how dehydrated you are based on the size of the red blood cells, the shape of the red blood cells, and how much hemoglobin is in the red blood cells. And we could check your electrolyte balances, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and so on, which are very important, excuse me, in chemical reactions. Right, potassium and sodium are very important for muscle contraction and for heart contraction. People forget that your heart's a muscle, and so will your internal organs. On a different subject, real quick, I had a patient came in and said that they kept, they just been taking a lot of muscle relaxers. That's great if it's going to help you, feel better, get rid of the spasm or whatever. But the thing is that they're not really told is that your intestine's a muscle, your kidneys a muscle, your heart's a muscle, and it's going to relax everything. So your whole body is going to start to relax. And God forbid, you already have an underlying cause that you don't know, especially when it comes to heart, because most people don't know they have a heart issue until they have a heart attack. So this can actually cause, muscle relaxers unfortunately can actually cause you to have a heart attack if you have some kind of underlying condition that you don't even realize while you're trying to help something else. So, and then, your kidney panels can change. So just by that blood work, we can tell how your whole body's doing. So if anybody has any questions, you can leave it on the bottom of the comments and Facebook, on the Facebook, and even if it's afterwards and you're just watching the video or going through it, and then I'll get back to you on that. And then again, the phone number here is 631-766-9931 if you want to be brave and call up. A lot of people don't want to call because they don't want their voices to be heard. You don't have to say your name. You can just ask a question. That's all it is, questions. So other ways to evaluate your dehydration, you can do this on your own, really, is how many times you go to actually urinate. Most people urinate 4 to 7 times a day. So if you're all of a sudden urinating less than 4 times a day, there's a good chance that you can be dehydrated. Color of your urine, right? And in the morning when you get up, that's usually the darkest, right? Because you haven't really drank anything all night, but your body's still circulating, and your kidneys are still taking out the toxic wastes and materials and then putting it into the urine to excrete them. So when you finally do go to the bathroom, it's a darker color, and that's normal. Normal, the lighter it gets, then the healthier you are as far as hydration goes. Now, it's a kind of a rare thing. You can overhydrate. A lot of times athletes would do that. I see them all the time in the gym, and it's like they walk around with a gallon of water every time I see them. You don't need to do that. You definitely don't want to overhydrate, because again, that puts pressure on your kidneys too, right? So there's kind of like a fine line as to that. Odor, right? You can get a pungent odor, then it smells like urine, then it's a little bit too concentrated. We got to get back on that, right? But if you can have a UTI, urinary tract infection, and then the urine will be cloudy, a little fuzzy. I actually had a urinary tract infection a couple years back that was not resolved. I thought it was, but it wasn't, and it kind of hung out in my kidneys, and it caused me to have a septic attack, and I was in the hospital for a whole month, because my that staph infection spread everywhere. So, keep an eye out for that, because that was not a fun time to spend a whole month in the hospital with tubes in you. So, be careful there. And if you have an abnormal sweet odor, then too much glucose in your system, that means your it's overflowing, which means you may be pre-diabetic and diabetic. You might not know that, but you can easily get a dipstick test done. You can do it in my office. You can go to medical doctors, whatever, and they just you get urinate in a cup, and they dip a stick in, and then they have different colors with parameters, and they can tell you that easily enough. And if you're over 40, you should be doing that twice a year anyways. It's a kind of a real easy, inexpensive way to check that, to see if you have something going on. So, how much water should you actually drink? All right, I'm getting flagged here. I only got 3 minutes, so it's real easy. for every 50 pounds of body weight, you should be drinking a quart of water, right? So that's 32 ounces for every, go over 3 quarts, so don't go over 96 ounces a day, no matter how much you weigh, unless you're doing some kind of athletic event or something where it requires more. So real quick about next week, I have a special guest coming. She's Dawn Tesserero. She's a nutritionist in the office, and she has her own office. She's really smart about that stuff, and she's our go-to person. She will be here next week as we finish up with part 6 of 6 on clean eating. We'll talk about different kinds of diets, and the show's going to be basically for her, and she's going to have a lot of great information about what to eat and what not to eat. So till then, this is Dr. Frank Gomez, Total Health Wellness Center, signing off at the Wellness Connection, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday at noon, churchtalkradio.com. Thank you.